Hey everybody, Steve Fretzin here, and I hope you're having a lovely day today. We are smoky here in Chicago in June. We've got this wonderful big fire happening in Canada, and so took a nice walk today and came back with a sore throat and said, "Uh-oh, that's not good." But nothing compared to people dealing with those things up north, and hopefully they're okay. Um, hope you're enjoying the show. We've got two shows a week every week, been running for over 5 years, over 500 episodes, and we've got something for everybody. You want to learn business development, marketing, time management, technology, you name it, we've got it. And we hope that this show is adding a lot of value for your life. If it is, please don't be greedy. Share it with people. Let them know about the show. And obviously give us a kind review on your phone. And that's all I have to say about that in the famous words of Forrest Gump. Was that Forrest Gump? Yeah, that was Forrest Gump. That's all I have to say about that.
Yep. I use that quote fairly often in other circumstances too. So yeah, it's a good one.
Okay. What is it? Stupid is as stupid does. There's a bunch of good quotes from that movie.
Yeah, there's a good one.
Dan, good to see you, man. We go back quite a few years. I think back to your Avo days. Is that the case?
Yeah. I think that's the first time we connected. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I came and I spoke to like a bunch of Avo people in Chicago. I don't know if that rings a bell.
Yeah. That sounds familiar. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, very cool. Well, welcome, and I'm so happy you're here. Let's start off with the quote of the show. This is an important one for everyone listening. ABC, always be closing. That's from Glengarry Glen Ross. Great play, great movie. And I know you wrote kidding next to the because coffee's for closers and it's all about closing. And there are people listening that are like would agree with that 100%. I think you and I both know that sales has changed quite a bit. So I'd love you. What's your take on that quote? Why obviously you're goofing on me a little bit, but as the sales free guy, but
That's totally yeah. No, I mean, listen. First off, it really is a fantastic movie, and as an analysis of, to some extent, the way some salespeople think or used to think, getting inside of their heads in terms of kind of, how to think about sales or how people used to think about sales. It's quite fascinating and really is it's just a great movie. So wanted to give it a shout out there, but I think it is a really interesting jumping off point for us, Steve, in terms of and maybe it would it benefit to just give a little bit of context in terms of kind of where this comes up in the movie, just really briefly.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
So that there are a bunch of sales ends up being salesmen, but salespeople, doesn't really matter, and the sort of leader, the sales leader, comes in from
Alec
corporate,
Baldwin.
played by Alec Baldwin very
So good.
excellently, and gives this just kind of excoriating speech to them about how they're like not even not doing their jobs, but berating them as humans. And his mantra is ABC, always be closing. And it is just this kind of very, heavy-handed is even generous, just very heavy-handed sort of hardcore sales kind of push and lecture. And he doesn't even, the other joke that comes from this is coffee is for closers.
Yeah.
One of the guys gets up in the middle of the talk and goes to get himself a cup of coffee, and Alec Baldwin says, "What are you doing? You're not closing deals. Coffee is for closers. Sit back down." And so it's such a classic, at least for our generation, Steve, encapsulation of how sales was perceived and how it was done. And so I thought it was a really fun kind of jumping off point, both for us too, because I think there are still some pieces from that you can learn or adapt in modern sales techniques, though I'd love for you to push back on me. So I think it's fun from that perspective, but also fun to sit back and say, wow, how have things changed? And how can that type of an approach be really bad for you as you think about sales for your business and for your law firm today?
Yeah, and I want to get into all that, and I come from a background of pretty aggressive sales, and we had to leave 6 messages before we were able to give up on somebody, and it was never give up, don't stop closing, don't take no for an answer. It was that kind of an environment. I had regular nightmares about the managers I worked for and how aggressive they were towards me and the other teammates. And, that's like, putting in your time, I guess, but it was pretty brutal. And, thinking back on it, I laugh about it because I'm like, I guess sometimes you have to go to war to come out the other end. And that's sort of how I feel but these things happen for a reason, as they say, and so I think I needed to go through that stuff. But by the way, everybody, you're listening to my friend Dan Lear. He's the VP of Partnerships at InfoTrack, and I want to get into a real interesting business development, sales, conversation with you today to really give some great suggestions to people. But let's take a moment to step back and talk a little bit about your background and how you came to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Dan Lear, Seattle based, went to law school, was a tech lawyer for a number of years, worked at Microsoft actually while I was in law school, and then was outside counsel for them. Kind of pretty quickly realized that for me, I was way more interested in the kind of maybe technology side of legal practice than I was in being a technology lawyer. So a little bit more than 10 years ago, actually, ended up transitioning to a role in kind of business development, partnerships, and kind of thought leadership at Avo, which, as Steve mentioned, is maybe where we initially connected. And then since then have just been in a string of kind of successive different roles, building technology companies that serve lawyers and the legal industry. So I started a payments business in this space that's still going. Shout out to the folks at Confido Legal. I've helped a bunch of other companies along the way. I'm an advisor for a company called Off the Record that helps connect drivers with lawyers to fight their traffic tickets. But today I spend the majority of my time at InfoTrack, where I head up partnerships. So definitely sort of the long relationship based sales approach. And I think for me, Stephen, I don't want to pull you in too much of a direction, but like, when I left the law, and I do say that I sort of had some sales experience. I actually did a mission for my church where I spent kind of 2 years proselytizing. And so when people used to ask me if I had sales experience, I used to say that I sold God for 2 years. But when I left the law, like, I didn't really have a lot of tools to use in business, and I wasn't a developer. Products wasn't really my jam. And so, being a lawyer and having done a little bit of sales, I fell back on those kind of tools of persuasion. And I'll be honest, for the last even just 11 years in this space, or more than that now, the evolution of figuring out sort of how does one sell or advocate or is really develop business is really it's been an evolution and a real kind of area of development. I'll mention one more thing just as a side note, because this is kind of interesting too. The payments business that I started, we actually started it out of an existing business called Gravity Payments, which is based in Seattle, and they had a very specific and kind of very well-honed sales process that I had the good kind of fortune of being trained in and going through. And that really opened my eyes to sort of sales as a discipline and as a skill. And it wasn't hard sales, but it was also like very intentional. So it's really been an evolution for me, kind of getting to this place of kind of how you do it and still feeling like I have a ton to learn.
Yeah. Hey everybody, you ever wonder why top executives and athletes are so successful? It's typically because they have a coach, someone that is looking at them from the outside to identify their gaps, identify their potential. That's what I do. I'm Steve Fretzin, and I'm here to help you be that lawyer. If you're interested in a free consultation, click the link below and we'll get together and we'll identify where you can make improvements to be that lawyer. And the people that have the good luck to go through or to make a decision to go through a successful and proven sales process, to learn the skills and learn ways of doing things that are going to be efficient, that are going to be useful, that are going to not make people feel icky about it. That's a gift, and I'm teaching it every day. You're learning it, and whether it's me or anyone, and I've been through a ton of these. Some of them were more helpful and useful than others, but I guess part of it's like, what can you pull out of it that you can use? but having a
Yeah.
system soup to nuts, there's nothing much better than that. And then you can always customize it to your personality. But here's where I want to go with this. Like, there was a change that happened in the late 1900s and early 2000s with the internet. And I want to say, like, I saw this happen right in front of my eyes when more, because I actually sold websites back when websites weren't a thing. Like, they just had started out. And
Wow.
I was out
Okay.
working with
Yeah.
hotels, restaurants, and bars to sell them pretty sophisticated websites for, what had been a very kind of like a middle of the screen, crap. You still see a couple of those out there. And the advent of the internet, where information was readily available, was sort of the big switch in sales. Because if you go back to the 80s and 90s when I was selling, it was the sizzle of the steak. It was you had to trust the person. If they could transference of trust, and you kind of liked what they were selling, and it kind of made sense. You didn't know if the value is really there. Like, is this car really worth this much? Is this service really worth this much? Like, is this remodel really worth? You just had no way. So you would compare with other maybe vendors, but that was the only way that you would really ever know
Yeah.
if you were getting screwed or not. So we got screwed all the time. People were selling us all kinds of things, and we'd realize too late that was a mistake, or geez, I
Yep.
think I overpaid for that. The internet was the game changer, because that leveled the playing field, where people now and buyers now have information and price they just never had before. So now if you hard sell and they're like, no, I'll just go and I know my research. You're trying to sell me a car at this, or sell me a new kitchen at that. And I know that it's done here, and I know other people that'll do it, and I can do my research. So that's really what changed buyers and sellers. Buyers became much more in control, and they had all the information and the price. And so they're able to sort of work over the sales professionals and the lawyers and the doctor, whoever was out trying to provide a service or whatnot. So that's kind of, did you see that as well in your career?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't in sales that early. So sort of, and again, I never really, at least early on, saw myself as being in sales. And this is maybe a different conversation in terms of, I've heard some people say we're all in sales. And I think that's an interesting conversation. There's the Dan Pink To Sell Is Human book, but when you were talking, there was one story that I thought I'd share that came up for me. And I think it's pretty brief, but I bought a car a couple of years ago, and like everyone, we did our research in terms of what car we wanted, where we could get it, the price. And Steve, as a buyer, and I still actually feel a little bit bad about this, or I don't know, like there's clearly some stuff I got to work through, but as a buyer, I came into this, and it was a used car. I came into this with the perception of, like, if I don't negotiate, if I don't beat them up a little bit on price, then I'm not doing my job. And so, like, I went in there and I really tried to drive a hard bargain, and they basically were like, listen, this is the price. And I even walked out of the dealership.
Yeah, you did the whole walkout routine.
Yeah. And
I'm going.
And
I'm really going.
It took them 5 days to come back to me and basically just say, okay, we'll give you some modest discount. And I honestly think, as I've thought about this in retrospect, that they were like, listen, if that's what it takes, then fine. But I think this is the point I was making. I think as the sellers, they were like, listen, we know what this car's worth, because we can triangulate it against, 24 others of this exact mileage, exact condition, everything else. So, like, we're not, like, there's no reason for them to manipulate me, because they have access to all the same information that I have access to.
Yeah.
And
But
so,
look at what you went through.
To make a margin, but that's it,
But look at what you went through or thought you had to go through as a buyer, because we've been so twisted by the car industry, totally. And just in general, the fear of getting ripped off, the fear of being taken advantage of. And when I hear lawyers say they're going on a pitch meeting, I sort of cringe a little bit, because I realize what they're saying in that statement is, we're going to go out and we're going to wow and we're going to shock and we're going to awe with how amazing we are and how much value we provide, and how our rates are high, but who cares, and our firm is so deep, and all this, and I love all of that. It's maybe more of a matter of when that's discussed, not, or versus it being discussed, because I think the mantra that I always come back to, maybe I've mentioned this on the show, but it's prescription before diagnosis is malpractice. And people don't understand
Yep.
that the way that we need to sell today is by not selling, but rather walking someone through a buying decision. And if that's a fit and a win-win, you feel good about the car, I feel good about the car, the price is fair for both parties, we've talked it all out, there are not a lot of alternatives, this is the one that makes the most sense, let's decide if this is something we should move forward on. And that's not how people are engaging in business development or sales. And it's one of the reasons it can be so stressful.
Yeah. I'd love for you, Stephen, maybe you have talked about it on the podcast, but tell me a little bit, kind of coming up as a sales professional. And again, maybe all of your listeners have heard this, so you can keep it brief if you, but tell me how that shift happened. Like, did you sort of wake up one morning and discover like, oh man, my tools aren't working? Or was it like, oh wow, this is evolving into something that really feels more natural as a human, or at least more aligns with my values? I'm curious how that evolution happened for you.
It really happened when I met a coach who asked me a lot of questions about how I was selling and what my process was. And I regurgitated what my company had told me to do. I was following a system that my company at the time, and I was selling franchises. And I actually had something called a pitch binder. What is that? Right? I warm people up a little bit. We're sitting at a coffee shop and I go, let me tell you a little bit about my company. And I start going through all the value, all the value, all the value. I take them on a tour of a couple different stores. It was all selling, selling, selling. And I didn't know what they were really interested in. I didn't know what their motivation was. I didn't know if they had any money. I didn't know if I was dealing with the right people. And this coach just laid all this on me, and I was like, my head exploded, because I was like, I'm the one using an outdated system. And I didn't even know it, because I was still doing great. I was still like the number one sales guy at some point, and I was, hitting my numbers, and everybody was happy with me and all that. But it was like all of these gaps that I just didn't realize I had. And so it took someone looking at me from the outside in, because I couldn't see it myself. And that's what I find myself doing for a lot of lawyers is they're not recognizing that they're not cross-marketing. They're not recognizing their methodologies outdated. They're networking in effect. I mean, the list of things that I'm able to identify now, 21 years in is, amazing. Like, as even people that are doing millions and millions of dollars a year are unable to really recognize where their gaps are. So I drank the lemonade, and I got into coaching after that, because it was so powerful to me, that change that I saw in my life when I made that switch.
Yeah, no, I love that. So there's a book that, do you know Mike Whalen?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. So Mike's a good buddy of mine, has had a similar career path to me, lawyer, because sort of turned legal technology dude. And he turned me on to a book that you may or may not be have heard of, or even it might just be a methodology. I'm not sure as a book, but Win Without Pitching.
I don't know that I've heard that one. No.
Lear Inns, and then there was another guy that he was doing a podcast with. Anyway, Mike turned me on to that content and onto that kind of book and that kind of methodology. But just speaking, when you sort of started talking about a pitch meeting, and I have to say, and Gall, Steve, maybe I need to hire you as a coach, because I still feel like I have so much to learn and I could do this so much better. Which again, like is kind of the fun and interesting thing about sales. But the whole premise of that book and that philosophy is like, to your exact point, if you don't know where that quote unquote pitch meeting is going to go, if you haven't checked some boxes, if you haven't identified what the issues are, if you don't know who the decision makers are, if you don't know the criteria upon which these decisions are being made, and you're going into a pitch meeting, you've probably already lost.
Yeah.
And that for me, talking about sort of that mindset shift it has been a really interesting one for me, in terms of like, and thinking about it from a lawyer business development perspective, right? Like, do they know who you are? Do they know what you stand for? Do they know how you deliver services? Do you know whether or not that aligns with what they want? Those are all things that can sort of be a part of that buyer's journey well before you're quote unquote pitching them.
Yeah. If you're a rainmaker and you're feeling like you're on an island, you don't have anyone to share your ideas with, solve problems with, you're going to want to check out my Rainmaker roundtables. Click the link below and learn more. I don't want to take, the idea of pitching or the idea of sharing. This is why our firm is great for you, because you have these needs. You've got this urgency for a situation that's, legal situation. Our firm specializes in that. We've won more than anybody. We're the best. There's nobody better to handle this than us. That's fine. But just don't do that first. Like, don't go into that first. Like, let's take the time to build some rapport. Let's set up a game plan for how the meeting's going to run. Let's focus on what I call and teach discovery, which is how do we go from the tip of the iceberg down to the bottom where all the water is. It's all, 80% down. And let's make sure that we understand them on a level that maybe no one else ever has, other than maybe a therapist. And at that point, when you understand people, you've qualified that they check all the boxes as a good client for you, then not only can you pitch, but your pitch is going to be so much more in line with what they shared with you they need. So just as an idea, if I hear that someone just needs one thing, okay, let's say they just need they've got a sexual harassment claim, they need someone that can handle that. My pitch involved talking about our whole firm and how our full service firm can help them. Is that a good idea? Or should I just focus on pitching what they told me they needed to see, hear, experience to solve the problem? So it's like people just make mistakes all the time and they just don't recognize. I wonder why they never called me back. I thought this was such a great fit. Or I wonder why they're not responding to my emails. And I pitched them and I sent them this great proposal. I spent 20 hours on it, an RFP, all this stuff. And they're just clueless. And so it's typically lack of a good process and pitching too soon before you fully qualified. That's, in fact, I used to have mugs. It didn't say coffees for closers, but inside the mug, you'll love this, it said coffees for qualifiers. And I was trying to flip the mindset of the people I was working with at the time. It was entrepreneurs and sales professionals, but flip the script and say, we need to stop worrying about the close. The close will happen. If you do all these things right, if you take a step up every stair to get to the top of a staircase, the door's open, you walk through, right? As long as you touch every stair, you're going to know that you can walk through and the deal is yours. Or maybe as a side effect, you start to understand that this isn't a fit and not every box was checked. Maybe we can cut this off early, not meet us again, and say, look, this isn't someone who can you work with someone, Dan, who has no money?
Right.
Can you work with someone who is not the decision maker and is going to be taking all of your extensive information and bringing it up the ladder? I mean, how much does that shoot you in the foot when somebody tries to tell your story and try to do your sales process for their boss, right? Who's money conscious and you're not the cheapest guy in town, right? I mean, there's all these things that can break down.
Totally.
So,
I
was just going to put it back on you and say, like, what's helped you you've had a successful career in relationships and helping people with partnerships and in business development. I mean, what's been your secret sauce?
Wow, that's such a great question. And I mean,
is it a numbers game? I mean, is it what's
so well, I've been I've recently gotten the feedback that I'm too nice and very likable. And the too nice piece is actually something that I'm trying to sort of sort out because you don't want to be a doormat, right? But I like to some extent, and I don't like, I know that's not replicable, but like I to some extent that's just a part of my personality, I guess, that I've traded on. But the thing, and this is where I wanted to come back to ABC, the thing that I have done that is I think I hope politely persistent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't give up. At least until I'm told fairly clearly. I don't go all the way to a no. And I've heard some salespeople say we annoy them until they just give in. That's not me. But I have been pretty persistent in when I see something that I want and a direction I want to go in kind of sticking with that. And that's kind of like that spirit of ABC that of like opportunity seeking, like, hey, I'm open for business.
Yeah.
I'm looking to grow and to have an impact in this world. And I'm willing to do, not whatever it takes, but I'm willing to work to realize the aspirations and the dreams that I have, or even just, the thing that I want to get out of in that particular moment. Um, I know you're a big fan of this. If I were to pick something else, I'm a pretty decent networker.
Hmm.
I like meeting people. I like meeting interesting people. I'm genuinely curious about who they are. I love hearing people's stories. I like aligning their stories with my stories. Um, and I like building those relationships. That's one thing I found, again, maybe it's just became it because it came naturally to me. But when I first got out of college and was first trying to just like figure out my way in the professional world, I did a lot of networking, and I almost instantly felt that the notion of just sending cold resumes out into the world with the hopes that someone would respond to them just felt like such a futile exercise, both because it was so it created, and again, now we're going way deeper or farther than you wanted to, Steve, but I'll try to make this quick. It created this what felt to me like very false experience of like me presenting myself to them as something that I wasn't, and them reacting to that in a way that wasn't genuine either. And I was much more interested in being like, hey, Steve Fretzin, you seem like an interesting person. You're doing things that are in the general vicinity of things that I'm interested in. Can we meet and have you tell me about what you see and how you see the world? And maybe have you tell me about three people so that I can, better understand. Like that just felt like such a more organic and human way to like approach
Yeah.
like professional development and business than these sort of just cold kind of impersonal
Yeah.
approaches.
But I think that's leading into, and I love that you shared that the idea that how sales has changed, and now we're calling it business development because it's just
Yeah.
easier on the eyes, if you will, or the ears. The idea that it's relationship driven, the idea that it's about solving problems. It's not about convincing anybody or not about jamming a square peg in a round hole or anything like that. It's how are we meeting people who have a need for our services, walking them through a buying decision. Is there a fit? And here's the piece that might be missing for you that I'm really trying to help my clients with is proceed forward with the people who are qualified. And there's 4 qualifiers that I'll share real quick. And then anyone
Yeah.
that doesn't meet these 4 criteria, they're kind of out. So I'm not going to do the follow up in the same way that I used to, where I will follow up with you to the end of time, no matter what you say. I want to qualify in the first meeting, second meeting, these 4 things. Number 1 is, do they have compelling reasons to change? So if somebody has a problem that I don't solve, I'm out. If someone has a significant problem or multiple problems that I solve, they've opened up to me about them. Great. They don't have a plan. They don't. They're not networking effectively. They're not locking up. They're getting in front of 10 people, only closing 2, not 5 or 6. Whatever it might be, it's costing them a lot of money. Okay, compelling reasons to change. Number 2, are they committed to changing? I'm not asking for them for my business. I'm saying, are you committed to changing and not staying the path that you're currently on, where you told me you're losing all this money and time? Number 3 is, are they the decision maker? And if not, who is? And there's a very nice way of saying that. It's not, you're clearly a nobody at your company. Who is?
Right.
Like, you're not going to say that. It's something more along the lines of, look, Dan, obviously, this is a big decision. Just out of curiosity, is there anyone else at your organization that's involved in making these kinds of high impact decisions? Okay. So number 3 is, am I talking to the right person? And number 4 is, are they qualified financially? If somebody has a bankruptcy and credit card debt and is way overextended, and you're trying to sell them something for 20 grand, I mean, you can spend all the time you want and they might seem very interested, but it's not going to work. Right. So we now, could they find the money? Yeah, maybe pay off the debt. Don't, feed your kids first, right? That kind of thing.
Right.
But if somebody has those 4 qualifiers, and I understand that they are ready to be presented to, and I understand them better than anybody, If it's just me pitching without understanding those four things, then shame on me. I've just expended and wasted a tremendous amount of time with someone who I would consider unqualified for that time. Does that all make
Yep.
sense?
Oh, I love it. I was actually writing it down. I was just going to jump in on number 3, the decision maker, the sales training that we did at Gravity that I really liked. Other than yourself, who would be involved in making this decision?
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, totally recognizing that you're going to be a part of this, but who else?
If anyone, like, I don't want to offend
Right.
anybody.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, you're
Totally
obviously
fair.
the
Yeah.
big shot in the room. Don't want to offend you. I'm just curious
Yeah.
if there's anybody. There probably isn't, but if there was. And even then, believe it or not, I may even ask another question like, tell me okay, so it's you. Great. Tell me your process. Well,
Your
the process.
decision-making process.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So once I get the proposal for you, Dan, I'm going to run up to my board and see what they have to say. Well, that just changed everything you just told me, because even though you are a part of the decision-making process, you just mentioned you had a board, and the board is ultimately responsible. So now I know that, right? So maybe now I'm going to change direction a little bit. Anyway, this is a conversation that can go on for hours and hours. I want to wrap up with our final kind of thing, which is Dan's big mistake. What's something that happened to you in your career that was a big mistake, you learned from it, that you could share with people listening?
Yeah. So, really early on in my legal career, fired is probably a strong word, but got
Quietly let go.
Yeah, exactly. Parted for mutually with one of the law firms that I worked with early on. And it was a real shock to my system. It still probably informs the way I think about the world. I was a young attorney. I had a young family. Like, I had worked really hard to get where I was, and it put a ton of it just felt really, really big at the time. And I think the biggest lesson, I probably walked away with 2 lessons from that, though. And this is, I've got, and Steve, you and I have talked about this. I've got teenage boys that I'm trying to help launch into the world. I know you have a son who's getting ready for college or maybe on the way.
Yeah, we'll call that a work in progress.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. But the thing I try to instill in them is like, because the question that there were 2 things that I walked with. The first question I'd never asked myself is like, and it's insane, but this is just how things work out sometimes. What do I want? Right? Like I think part of the reason that this job didn't work out was that my heart wasn't in it and I didn't know where I was going. And so like that was sort of lesson number 1. And then I think lesson number 2 was, maybe it's sort of like, I guess I guess it was 2 things. What do I want? And then the second was, and how do I go get it? Like, I need to have a plan.
Not everybody that goes into law that's a litigator should litigate, right? Or it's not everybody that goes to college knows their major. They just go into something and then they kind of realize halfway through, this major really wasn't for me. Because I did that. I went to college and I went right into a major that I thought was the right idea, and wasted a lot of time and money and doing not today's kind of money, but back in the 80s kind of money.
Enough, yeah.
Right? It was still something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think sometimes we have to be put into situations that we don't want, so that we know what we do want.
And it's funny, when I was trying to sort of extricate myself from that and figure that out, I was so overwhelmed that actually the way I sort of went about moving forward was I couldn't figure out what it was that I wanted. So I started like, crossing out things that I didn't. And so, yeah, like absolutely. Like it was, but it was tough, but it was really transformative because it helped me sort of really take control of who I was and where I wanted to go and like where I wanted to take my life and my career. And so that, yeah, I think the lesson I would walk away from that is like, or that I would share is like, if you don't know what you want, be clear about that. And second, even if it's in the short term, put together a plan to help you. And again, not even achieve it, but like move in that direction.
Yeah. Great advice. I appreciate that. And let's take a moment to thank our sponsors. We've got PIMCon coming up in October, first class experience in Scottsdale at the Phoenician. And of course, the Law Her podcast with Sonia Palmer, Crushing It for Women, and check that podcast out. Dan, if people want to get in touch with you, they want to learn more about you, InfoTrack, what's the best digits?
Yeah, best way to find me. I'm spending a lot of time these days on LinkedIn. You can find me Dan Lear. I'm in Seattle. I think I might even have one of those like linkedin.com/in/Dan Lear. Like I think I got one of those
your name's
custom
right in
names
there
early on.
Sure.
Yeah. So pretty easy to find me. I'm pretty active there. That's probably the best way to track me down.
Okay.
I'm also on Twitter at Right Brain Law. I spend some time there these days. But yeah, that's probably the best way. And I love Steve talking to people who like particularly are in that space of like unsure what they want to do, but also really love chatting with legal professionals, lawyers, whomever, about building their firm, taking it in new directions, that kind of thing. So would welcome anyone to reach out and tap me for whatever value my experience may provide.
Now, it's very generous, and you have a depth of knowledge and background in legal, and I just appreciate you coming on the show. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge and kind of going back and forth with me a little bit today. And I know this was super helpful for everyone listening, and you and I will keep in the loop as well. Thanks, man.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, and thank you everybody for hanging out with Dan and I today for a little bit and talking the little shop around the ABCs of business development, if you will. And my hope is that every show that you listen to, you're taking something away that's helping you get a little better, a little smarter, move in the right direction. To Dan's point, like have a little bit more of a plan, have it move in a direction that's going to really make the best use of your time and your career. So take care, everybody. Thank you. Be safe. Be well. We will talk again soon. Are you ever curious what's really holding you back in business development? Sometimes it's hard to see the label from the inside of the bottle. I'm Steve Fretzin, and I can help you grow your book of business. Get a 30-minute free consultation with me. We'll identify gaps, identify your potential, and let's take it to the next level so you can be that lawyer. Click the link below for a free consultation.